Last month I stood on these same steps with Prime Minister Sanchez of Spain when we said that the point of recognising the state of Palestine was coming closer. That point has now arrived. Today, Ireland, Norway and Spain are announcing that we recognise the state of Palestine. Each of us will now undertake whatever national steps are necessary to give effect to that decision. In the lead up to today's announcement, I've spoken with a number of other leaders and counterparts, and I'm confident that further countries will join us in taking this important step in the coming weeks. This is an historic and important day for Ireland and for Palestine. On the 21st of January 1919, Ireland asked the world to recognise our right to be an independent state. Our message to the free nations of the world was a plea for international recognition of our independence, emphasising our distinct national identity, our historical struggle, and our right to self-determination and justice. Today, we use the same language to support the recognition of Palestine as a state. We do so because we believe in freedom and justice as the fundamental principles of international law, and because we believe that permanent peace can only be secured upon the basis of the free will of a free people. Taking our place on the world stage and being recognised by others as having the right to be there was a matter of the highest importance for the founders of our state. From our own history, we know what it means. Recognition is an act of powerful political and symbolic value. It is an expression of our view that Palestine holds and should be able to vindicate the full rights of a state, including self-determination, self-governance, territorial integrity and security, as well as recognising Palestine's own obligations under international law. It is a message to those in Palestine who advocate and work for a future of peace and democracy that we fully respect your aspirations to be living freely, in control of your own affairs and under your own leadership. On the 10th of May, 143 out of 193 UN member states, 80% of those present and voting, voted to determine that the state of Palestine is qualified for membership in the United Nations in accordance with the Charter of the UN. Our step today, taken with Norway and Spain, is a further recognition of the legitimate right to statehood. It is a statement of unequivocal support for a two-state solution, the only credible path to peace and security for Israel, for Palestine, and for their peoples. We have previously said that recognition is a step we would ideally have taken as part of a process towards that goal. However, we are 3 decades after the Oslo process, and perhaps further than ever from a just, sustainable and comprehensive peace settlement. Our decision to recognise Palestine should not have to wait indefinitely, especially when it is the right thing to do. It is a decision being taken on its merits, but we cannot ignore the fact that we are taking it as Palestinians in Gaza are enduring the most appalling suffering, hardship and starvation. A humanitarian catastrophe unimaginable to most and unconscionable to all is unfolding in real time. How can anyone justify children going to sleep at night not knowing if they will wake up? Today, we are taking a significant political step. There will be reaction. There will be interpretations of its implications. But let us not lose sight of this fundamental truth. Children are innocent. The children of Israel, the children of Palestine, they deserve peace. It is long past time for a ceasefire, for the unconditional release of hostages, for unhindered access for humanitarian aid. There should be no further military incursion into Rafah. There should be no more Hamas or Hezbollah rockets fired at Israel. Civilians on all sides must be protected by international humanitarian law. Violence and hatred can only ever be a dead end. The only pathway to peace is political. The people of Palestine deserve a future filled with hope, a future defined by success instead of suffering, a future at peace. The people of Israel deserve the exact same thing. To the people of Israel, I say today, Ireland is resolute and unequivocal in fully recognising the state of Israel and Israel's right to exist securely and in peace with its neighbours. Let me be clear that Ireland condemns the barbaric massacre carried out by Hamas on the 7th of October last. Civilians attacked, murdered, hostages taken in the most brutal and terrifying of circumstances, including a young Israeli-Irish child. We call again for all hostages to be immediately returned to the arms of their loved ones. But let me also be clear, Hamas is not the Palestinian people. Today's decision to recognise Palestine is taken to help create a peaceful future. A two-state solution is the only way out of the generational cycles of violence, retaliation and resentment, where so many wrongs can never make a right. Just as Ireland's recognition as a state eventually led to the establishment of our now peaceful republic, we believe that Palestinian statehood will contribute to peace and to reconciliation in the Middle East. A peace that honours the legitimate aspirations of all people in the region to live with respect, justice, security and dignity, free from violence or the threat of violence. Today, moving in lockstep with our European colleagues, we seek to be bearers of hope. We want to reaffirm our belief that peace is possible, that justice is achievable, and that recognition of both states, Palestine and Israel, is the cornerstone upon which this peace must be built. So today we're saying we recognise the state of Israel. We recognise its right to exist in peace and security within internationally agreed borders. We equally recognise the state of Palestine and its right to exist in peace and security within internationally agreed borders. Recognising the statehood of Palestine sends a message that there is a viable alternative to the nihilism of Hamas. Hamas has nothing to offer but pain and suffering to Israelis and Palestinians alike. There is also no future in the extremist version of Zionism that fuels settler violence and illegal appropriation of land in the West Bank. I want to thank our international partners in Norway and Spain and in other like-minded countries for their close and continued cooperation. I want to thank the Taoiseach for his ongoing work on this issue. I look forward to continuing to work with them on our shared objective of delivering long overdue peace and prosperity to the people of Israel and Palestine and the wider Middle East. Ireland will always stand with those who are ready to walk a political pathway to peace, and we will do everything in our power to help to bring it about. That's what today's decision is about. We take it to offer hope and encouragement to the people of Palestine at one of their darkest hours. We in Ireland see you. We recognise you. We respect you. We will continue to work so that you and your children and your children's children can have the better future you deserve, and so that one day Palestinian children and Israeli children can live side by side in peace and security.
The decision yesterday by government to recognise the State of Palestine, which will formally take effect on the 28th of May, is a historic moment for Ireland. It is a clear and immutable statement of our deeply held belief that there can be no peace in the Middle East until the Israeli and Palestinian peoples alike enjoy the same rights to self-determination, statehood, peace, security and dignity. The principle of equality is the foundation for justice, for peaceful coexistence and for a better future. And that is why today, with this principle under concerted attack across the Middle East, that we have taken this step. Few states in the world have invested as much intensive diplomatic engagement, energy and application as Ireland into supporting, nurturing and protecting the viability of a negotiated pathway to the realisation of that statehood on equal and sovereign terms for Palestinians and Israelis. Over decades, we have engaged with the governments, leaders and peoples of the Middle East. In recent months, we've worked intensively with European and Arab partners to ensure that our decision to recognise a Palestinian state would be taken as part of a comprehensive political framework that can finally end this brutal conflict. It is with a heavy heart that we watch those intent on imposing by force a future based on violence, domination, subordination and exclusion become some of the most prominent voices in Israel and Palestine today. We reject that future. Instead, we endorse a future that so many people in the Middle East and internationally have put so much time and energy and commitment into developing over decades, one based on mutual respect, equality, and on two states for two peoples. It is important that our decision to recognise Palestine is not misrepresented as a hostile act towards the State of Israel. We unequivocally support the right of the State of Israel to exist and the right of the Israeli people to peaceful self-determination, just as we unequivocally support the right of the State of Palestine to exist and the right of the Palestinian people to peaceful self-determination. We condemn without equivocation the savagery of Hamas on October the 7th. We acknowledge the heartbreak, loss and anguish of the Israeli people. We recognise, validate and agree with your desire to live in security and dignity as a strong, vibrant and independent state. Just as we acknowledge the heartbreak, loss and anguish of the Palestinian people and recognise, validate and agree with your desire to live in security as a strong, vibrant and independent state. Israeli and Palestinian citizens alike are a valued and cherished part of our society here in Ireland, and I challenge and reject anyone who would seek to delegitimise either's history, culture or beliefs. In recognising the State of Palestine, we also unambiguously reject those in Palestine and in Israel who call for the entirety of the land between the Mediterranean Sea and the River Jordan to be a mono-ethnic state based either on forcible exile or subjugation. A new pathway is needed towards the aim that is overwhelmingly endorsed by the international community, a two-state solution based on the 1967 borders with the State of Israel and an independent, democratic, contiguous, sovereign and viable state of Palestine, living side by side in peace and security and mutual recognition, with Jerusalem serving as the future capital of both states. A solution that will bring to an end the 57-year Israeli occupation of Palestinian territory. To realise that aim, we believe that the parties must in the future meet as equals, as two states, with the responsibility to come to a final settlement in direct negotiations. Today, we make clear to the Palestinian people that our relationship with you is one of two equal states and, as described in the UN Charter, on the basis of respect for the principle of equal rights and self-determination of peoples and to strengthen universal peace. We are also clear that in order for the State of Palestine to become the reality that its people aspire to, much is needed from its leadership. Just as we will always affirm Palestine's legitimate rights as a state, we will always expect Palestine to fulfil its obligations, as we do of all states. The Palestinian people are entitled to democracy, to human rights, to good governance and to the rule of law, and the State of Palestine must provide this. This is a future that we passionately believe in, and we will continue to support you in building this future. Recognition of Palestine is not the end of a process, it is the beginning. On Sunday, I travelled to Brussels to meet more than 40 Arab, European and other international partners to discuss how recognition can make a concrete, practical impact to ending this horrible conflict and implementing a two-state solution based on a comprehensive vision of peace that the Arab states have developed. We in government will continue to work tirelessly on the immediate priority of securing a ceasefire in Gaza, the unconditional release of hostages and full, safe and unhindered humanitarian access. There is a long road ahead, and today Ireland says unambiguously that this road must be walked by Israelis and Palestinians on the basis of an equal right to sovereignty, dignity and peace. Thank you very much indeed.
We recognise the State of Palestine, just as we equally and resolutely recognise the State of Israel and their right to protect all their people in peaceful existence. We call for an immediate release of all hostages and an end to the assault on the people of Gaza. This is not an endorsement of Hamas. We have learnt the hard way that violence against innocent civilians to try and achieve political aims can and must never win. Now, whether that be a car bomb on the streets of Homa or Jerusalem, be that a rocket landing in Tel Aviv or no warning blast in a Birmingham pub, be that an assault on a kibbutz or a bomb dropped from a jet fighter onto a refugee camp or a Gaza hospital, it is all wrong. But we know that condemnation on its own cannot deliver peace. What is needed is political negotiation to find an interim and then hopefully lasting constitutional democratic solution. We have been considering for decades, I recall, in our Parliament this issue of the recognition of the State of Palestine. And for many decades we've said now is not the right moment, this is not the right time, but today is the right time, and an important time for us to do that. It follows that vote by 143 countries in the United Nations the week before last, recognising their right to join the United Nations. It comes at a moment when hundreds of thousands of people in Gaza are on the brink of starvation, and it comes at a time where ongoing conflict in the West Bank has been allowed to fester for decades. This problem did not start on the 7th of October, but we have to start thinking now about delivering, helping deliver, doing everything we can to help deliver an immediate ceasefire, but also what comes the day after that. And the day after that has to involve the recognition of the State of Palestine, and thereby bring peace to both Israel and Palestine, which is what we seek. Thank you.
In your announcement, Taoiseach Simon Harris, you referenced the fact that the chances of securing a two-state solution have never been so far away, and you were referencing Norway, which obviously was the secret negotiator back in 1993. Can you explain how you believe today's announcement will help the situation, given we've just heard from the Israeli Foreign Minister, Mr. Katz, that he's withdrawing as ambassador from Norway and also from Ireland as well, saying that you're endangering Israel's sovereignty and you're endangering the country's security? Thank you.
So, Israel loses nothing from the recognition of the State of Palestine. We need to see a two-state solution, a solution that recognises the State of Israel, recognises the State of Palestine, and recognises that both have a right to exist in peace, security and stability in the region. So long has passed since the Oslo Accords. What we must now do, in the face of huge adversity and huge challenge, is keep the destination of a two-state solution alive. We must be on the right side of history. When people look back on this period of time in the decades ahead, I want to be able to say proudly that Ireland spoke up and spoke out in favour of international law, in favour of a political pathway to peace, and in favour of a two-state solution. Ireland has been so clear in its absolute condemnation of the horrific terrorist attack and massacre that the people of Israel experienced on the 7th of October. We again today reiterate our absolute condemnation of that and of Hamas. We do this to give hope to people in the region, in Palestine and Israel, who want to bring about peace and who want to bring about a two-state solution.
Could I just say, in respect of Minister Katz's contribution and statement, part of that statement does say that the route is through direct negotiations. I'd agree with that aspect of it, of the statement. We do need negotiations. Recognition of a Palestinian state creates that equal status in terms of Palestinians going to that table. But I'd also remind Foreign Minister Katz that there had been negotiations prior to this war in Aqaba and Sharm el-Sheikh between Jordan was there, other partners, Israel and the Palestinian Authority. Firm agreements were reached, but they were not implemented. And those were in respect of the settlements, for example, and the violent settlers in the West Bank, and there was an agreement that would cease. There's an urgent need to get back to the negotiating table and to get onto a political track, and the recognition of a Palestinian state is part of the Arab Peace Initiative, which has been presented to the United States, which will be presented to the European Union next weekend. That's the context, and we need to get back to the agreements of Aqaba and Sharm el-Sheikh in respect of moving this forward.
Good morning, thank you. Just following on from Paul's question there, the statement from Foreign Minister Katz includes a passage that today's decision sends a message to Palestinians and the world: terrorism pays. After the Hamas terror organisation carried out the largest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, after committing heinous sexual crimes witnessed by the world, those countries choose to reward Hamas and Iran by recognising a Palestinian state. Given there have been multiple resolutions from the Dáil in the last 10 years about recognising Palestinian statehood, but there wasn't any follow-up action from any Irish government until now, isn't it true to say that this has all been prompted by the events that began with October 7th?
No, Hamas is not the Palestinian people. And here in Ireland, better than most countries in the world, we know what it's like when a terrorist organisation seeks to hijack your identity and seeks to speak for you. Palestine are the children today who went to bed last night starving, who we hope wake up today, many of whom won't wake up if there's further military incursion into Rafah in the days ahead. Palestine is made up of people, decent people. So is Israel. And we need to be able to differentiate, and we are able to differentiate. And I think right-thinking people around the world are able to differentiate between the actions of terrorists and the decent people of a state. It's absolutely true that it's been Ireland's long-standing policy position through successive governments that we wished to recognise the state of Palestine as part of a political process towards a two-state solution. It's also absolutely true that the environment has changed so much now that ourselves and Spain and Norway, and I believe in the weeks ahead other countries, and indeed 80% of people voting at the UN on behalf of their country, now believe that it is so important to take action to keep the destination of a political settlement that brings about a two-state solution alive.
Can I say, Gavin, that today's decision is about the empowering of moderation within Palestine? It can be argued that Israeli strategy, war and suppression of the Palestinian people has empowered extremism, and we're moving in a different direction. And I would also say there are different perspectives in the region. Yesterday I spoke to the Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority, warmly welcomed this decision as one that would give him support in the wider agenda of reform of Palestinian institutions and the Palestinian Authority, and they have an ambitious agenda in respect of the days and months ahead. The Foreign Minister and the King of Jordan, as the Taoiseach will know, equally warmly welcomes this step, as do all of the Arab Peace Contact Group, who see this as a strong fillip and support to their efforts to get meaningful and substantive talks underway within the framework of the Arab Peace Initiative. So this is very much about peace.
Can I just add that as well, if I can, Gavin? In my few words, I tried to maybe make that very point, that we, more than any country maybe, have learnt that lesson. Condemnation on its own does not work. You have to find political solutions. But also, you have to say at this moment in time that the assault on the people of Gaza, regardless, I mean, what happened on the 7th of October was horrific. We all recognise that. But what's happening now in Rafah and has happened in North Gaza, there is not justification for that. And you can't stay silent on that either. You can't just fold your hands and ignore that reality. And that is perhaps why, at this moment in time, as you say, for decades, as the Taoiseach said, I've been considering when is the right time, and if not now, when, to recognise the right of Palestine.
Taoiseach, can I just ask, is there any concern, we've seen the response from the Israeli officials so far this morning, is there any concern that that could lead to further violence in Gaza? And then can I also ask, there's not very many now, but there are a few comments saying that this is virtue signalling, that it's not going to change anything. What would you say to people making those comments?
I would say that it's never the wrong time to do the right thing, and I want to know in years to come that Ireland spoke up, spoke out in favour of peace, in favour of a political settlement that allows children in Palestine, children in Israel, live safely and in peace and security side by side. It has been the long-standing position of this country that a two-state solution is the way to bring peace to the Middle East, and we believe in moving in lockstep with Norway and with Spain, two countries that also have a long involvement in peace. We think that sends an important message to, as the Taoiseach correctly says, moderates and peacemakers in both Israel and Palestine, and they exist in both countries. We have to stop defining nations by a select number of individuals. Decent people living in these two countries, often in fear and in insecurity. We want to continue to have good relations with Israel. We're very clear today in our comments, as I've been very clear in my comments to the President of Israel, in relation to the importance of calling for the unconditional immediate release of all the hostages, condemning absolutely Hamas. And as I've said so many times, we utterly condemn Hamas. We see them as an illegal, disgusting terrorist organisation.
Taoiseach, what do you say to your critics who would suggest this has nothing to do with the Middle East, but is a populist decision that is based on the upcoming European elections?
I'd say they clearly don't understand the psyche or the depth of feeling of the Irish people, and I'd say they should follow the sentiment and feelings of the Irish people a little more closely.
Can I just say, just to make the point, that this was included in the government's programme for government when the government was formed a number of years ago, and if you read the programme for government, it very clearly caveats the commitment to recognition of a Palestinian state in terms of timing, in terms of the appropriate timing and circumstances, and in the context of the wider peace process. That is very much the context, and we've been working with Spain, Norway, and indeed with other like-minded groups within the European Union for quite some time now, for over 6-8 months intensively. Other states are at different stages within the European Union in respect of the recognition process, but no one doubts our bona fides, and certainly nobody in the region. And remember, countries like Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, they're extremely concerned about the impact of the war on Gaza, the October attack, on the wider regional stability and security and peace of all peoples in the region. They're saying to us that recognition is an important part of their initiative, of their desire to have a political track to replace this terrible war that's currently being waged. Yeah, well, do spoil a ball and go law. Starule show. In a Wilhelmina, agus stát na Héireann ag tuairt aitheantas dus na Palestíní, agus stát Palestíne a chur a bhaim. Táimid ag comhibrú leis an Spáin, agus le Norway, agus is cinenne atá a dhéanamh againn chun an póséis síocháinte a chuir chun chin na míana agus na bliana atá le teach. Táimid ag obair agus ag comhibrú leis an Jordan agus Egypt agus tíre eile sa régiún. Ní léon áras ording ach go bhfuil géará an coga a stoppa agus is ceart agus is cóir aitheantas a chóirt dus na Palestíní ag an bóta seo. Ní léon áras ording faoi sin agus tan Taoiseach agus Araráin agus méhéin agus an rialtas go thomláin taobh hir den chinne seo agus dhéanamar an cinenne iné agus tá formar cad an urlára seo an fógra seo a hiléirú do muinte na tíre.